How will the Swiss franc will move against the euro? Hi, this is Luca Discacciati, and I'm here in moneyswap.com. And in this webinar, we will try to figure out how the Swiss franc will move against the euro in the next month. Let me share my screen. And this is our website where you can exchange your Swiss franc in euro and vice versa, especially if you live in Europe and you work in Switzerland. This is the best server you can definitely find here in Switzerland to change your Swiss franc in euro. So let's go here on the chart. As I told you, in the previous webinar, in the previous episode of Currency Watch, we saw that the last all-time high was a perfect moment to change your Swiss franc in euro. We said literally change as many Swiss franc you can, because it's a very good moment. So today we will try to understand if the Swiss franc will continue to grow or it's time for a rebound. Okay, so for do that, we will use some indicator that we can find here in our software forecaster terminal. And first of all, we have to watch at this statistical indicator that, as you can see very intuitively, tell us if prices are in an overbought situation. It means they are close to a very high, to a high point, or if prices are in oversold situation. Here, as you can see, the chart is in green. Okay, this is a very intuitive indicators that you can also find here in the, you can find the historical version here in the below part of the chart. As you can see, when this indicator stays in the lower band, it means that probably a low in prices for the Swiss franc will occur. And if the price stays here in the upper band, it means we are in an overbought situation. It means we are definitely looking for a top. Okay, so at the moment we are actually in the upper part. It means that we just visited a very top, and at the moment we are in the middle of this trend. Okay, so watching at this chart, what we can say is that we just had a very important high, and this means that probably we are not gonna see a new all-time high for a while. Okay, for how long? We have to watch, for example, the seasonality. Okay, seasonality is something really interesting because in this chart, as you can see, for example, if we put 10-year, okay, what you are looking right now with this red line is not the Swiss franc against the euro, but is the average of the Swiss franc against the euro in the last 10 years. Okay, so for example, as you can see, we know that historically speaking, okay, on average in the last 10 years, in at the mid of April until the mid of May, on average, the Swiss franc lost value against the euro, and contrary, starting from the mid of May until the end of July and beginning of August, historically speaking, the Swiss franc gained value against the euro. Okay, so this is what happened historically. Okay, as you can see, we can also plot the current year. So this is what is happening right now on the Swiss franc market. Okay, and what is really interesting, thanks to this software, we also have the correlation. We can see if a specific seasonality has a very high or very low correlation with the prices. And in this case, we have right now only the current price, which is what is happening right now in the market. We can also plot last year. We can also plot the 3-year, 5-year, 7-year, 10-year, 15, and 20. Okay. What is very interesting right now, the correlation between the current year and all this seasonality is very low. It means that these year prices for the Swiss franc are not moving like they did in the past. And this is something very interesting because we can go, for example, and isolate only the 7-year seasonality. We can leave the current price. We can cancel 3, 5, 10, 15, and 20, leaving only the 7-year, because as you can see, the 7-year seasonality has a very low correlation with the actual price. And this is an interesting situation, because when you have such a low correlation like we have right now between prices of the Swiss franc and the 7-year seasonality, which is what it did in the last 7 years on average, when we have such a low correlation, we can definitely say that probably the Swiss franc will do the opposite of what it did in the past. So, for example, if we highlight all this phase, starting from the beginning of May until the end of August, we can definitely say that historically speaking, this was a bullish period, okay, because 85% of this period in the last 7 years were bullish, were positive, with an average return of 4.2%. But this year could be exactly the opposite, because at the moment the correlation is so low. It means that actual prices current year is doing the opposite of what it did on average in the past. So this is why I think that we can have a downward movement, okay, a downward movement, something like this, until the end of August. Okay, so if you have Swiss franc to change, if you have your salary to change, this is a right moment to change your Swiss franc in euro, because, in my opinion, and statistically speaking, in the next 2-3 months, Swiss franc probably will lose value against the euro. So if you have now Swiss franc, it's time to change, because probably this will be the trend for the next 2 months. Okay, so hope you enjoyed, guys. See you next month. Remember to visit moneyswap.com and have a look to the promo page, where you can find all the promo. For example, right now you can earn 25 euro with your first currency exchange on our portal. And that's it. If you need something from us, here we are. See you next week. See you next month for the next Currency Watch episode. Bye bye.